Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer has the details on Harmony Gold's investor brief, in which the company declared that the acquisition of Moab Khotsong gold mine held many advantages. Welcome, Martin.
Hi, Sashnee.
Now, Harmony bought the mine from AngloGold Ashanti for $300 million in October. What advantages did the company highlight from the sale?
Now you can see that this was definitely a good buy. Initially, the shareholders of Harmony didn't like it, and you saw the shares falling. But as they've explained now, there are so many advantages from this share, because that Moab Khotsong was one of the operations that was fairly strong in AngloGold Ashanti. You know, we've been through this whole situation where AngloGold Ashanti traditionally wants to keep its Rolls-Royce assets, and it doesn't like the Volkswagens. But a lot of these Volkswagen assets are pretty good. And one of them was Moab Khotsong, and they were planning to do things with that. So in taking it over now, they've explained to the market that, you know, the whole grading situation changes for the group. The reserve situation is enhanced. The earnings per share, if you were to add it in now, would rise by a very good percentage of 65%. And there are so many advantages, and I'm quite happy about the way the South Africans do their transacting, because you see there that there's a win-win with the way they do it. They know that these assets are really owned by the people of South Africa, and the operators of those mines are really contractors with licenses over a period, and they don't do situations where the person who takes over these assets is in a bad situation. They want to make sure that they actually do well with this asset, because there are a lot of jobs involved. There's a lot of honor involved, because you've got to make sure that these gold assets there are turned to account in a proper way. So you want to give it to a company that can do it well. And I think this transaction between the two proves that it's good for South Africa, it's good for the workers, it's good for the stakeholders, it's good for the shareholders, and they are having to convince their shareholders about this, because there was skepticism initially, and they're also saying to the shareholders, we've managed to get this asset through, but we now want to raise some capital against it, or we want to perhaps raise equity. But we think it's definitely a good buy, and that the payback will be there. So it will be interesting to see how the shareholders react to that.
Now, earlier this year, AngloGold Ashanti restructured its SA mines to ensure viability, and Moab was one of its strongest performers.
Yes.
So why is this asset faring better for Harmony?
You know, Harmony have got certain distinct operational advantages. They've always been the company that can operate at lower cost. That's how they were founded. I can remember Peter Flack, you know, hiving off assets within the Harmony group at that stage. It was part of Rand Mines. You know, Rand Mines was one of the big 5 mining houses, but they had reached a situation where, strangely, they said they thought that they should die with dignity, and they should just wind down all the assets rather than try and grow. It was at that stage that new owners came in, and at an annual general meeting they said, we have got enough shareholders backing us to take over these assets, and one of them was Harmony, and they wanted to make sure that when they got into this business, they didn't ignore those most important people in your business, those down at the rock face drilling. They always emphasized that those are their important people, and that they cut down on their head office and they try to be lean. So that tradition is still with Harmony. They're a bottom feeder. They were a bottom feeder. So they needed to have low costs. They also are particularly good at mining, you know, shaft pillars. These are left for safety reasons, but they often contain a lot of gold. And if you can mine them very, very effectively, you will do the best out of extracting the maximum gold. And they believe that they can actually do it in a way that will be perhaps a premium on what would have been done.
Now, by August this year, AngloGold Ashanti was securing a far-reaching future for Moab. So why then the sale?
Well, you know, if you look at the deepest mine in South Africa, Mponeng, that is really head and shoulders above the other assets in the AngloGold Ashanti. So although Moab Khotsong was like second in line, the real one that they're wanting to put a lot of investment into was the Mponeng. And we see that even as they go deeper, the grades are still very good there. So they wouldn't have just given this asset away, by no means. But if it could be taken by someone who could really do it well, they got a return on it, that was the thing they'd like to do, because their big concentration and the capital they were wanting to put and concentrate it in Mponeng, because the potential returns there are so much better. And those are the sort of Rolls-Royce assets that they like to keep. And this sort of thinking goes way back, to when they disposed of their Free State assets to Patrice Motsepe. He got those Free State assets on a take now, pay later basis. And they said, well, these assets are not of the standard that we want to retain. We want to have mines that have higher grade and longer life. So we're prepared to shed those, but we want to give them to someone who can do a good job on them. And we saw that Patrice Motsepe's entry into gold mining through that space was very successful. I mean, he extracted billions of rands of profit out of that operation, because before that he had been like a mining contractor. You would go in and contract mine for a company. Then he actually became the mine owner, and it was the starting point for the African rainbow minerals, which we see so successful, and a very good starting point. So we can see that there's horses for courses. Some of the assets you really favor because they're at the top of the quality spectrum. The others you're prepared to shed because they are good, but they favor an approach by other mining companies, like a bottom feeder like Harmony. And you're doing best then for all the stakeholders and the country and the receiver of revenue to get the tax. I think that's the way to do it. And again, South Africans have showed that they're conscientious about the way they dispose of their assets. We've seen it with diamonds as well. When De Beers disposes of an asset and makes sure that the new owner is going to keep that going for some time, and that new owner is normally able to operate at lower costs, and they have got a different approach to their mining. And that's the way it works in the mining business. You saw BHP Billiton wanting to dispose of its South African assets. Those assets were very good. They went into South 32, which has taken over those aluminium assets and the manganese assets, which they want to keep now. The coal, of course, they also wanting to spin off, because they feel it'll be better in different hands. So it's all about strategy. You've got to have your strategy, you've got to stick to your strategy, and this is what you see the big companies do, and it results in this sort of disposal. But I think in this case it's going to be good for South Africa.
Thanks for speaking with us,
It's a great pleasure, Sashnee.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on South Africa's mining industry.